powered by Communitech. From Waterloo region in Ontario, Canada to the world. The conversations you need and want to hear with interesting people on topics at the intersection of technology and humanity. Tech for good. Let's get started.
Thank you, Talia, and welcome to TrueNorthTV. It's great to have you here. I've got a very special guest. It's Hillary Hartley. She's the Chief Digital and Data Officer with the province of Ontario. Welcome, Hillary.
Hi, Ian. Thanks for having me.
So, some big news that just came out. It's we're going to have a tracing app that is not a tracing app, contact tracing app, that's being launched. Shout outs from the Prime Minister, from the Premier. We're very excited about this. Tell us what you can about this new app.
Essentially, we've been working with Shopify for the past few weeks to build on the pilot, the prototype that they put together for the world. It's open source. They called it Kovac Shield, and we've been working with them after vetting lots of pathways for this. But it was the one that was the simplest, the most direct, and most privacy protective, I think. Essentially, it's an app that you download and you put your phone in your pocket and you forget about it. Unless and until you happen to be diagnosed with COVID-19, and then you receive a code from the public health unit, you're able to put that code into your app, which then flags for your phone that you have a positive diagnosis. So then it goes out and tells all the other phones that it has been in proximity to, that they have perhaps come in contact with someone that's been diagnosed with COVID-19. That's it. It operates via Bluetooth. There's no GPS, no location tracking. The phones essentially have they do a digital handshake, so to speak, through the Bluetooth. And so there's no phone number, no identifying information. Again, it's very simple, very straightforward. If your phone contacts another phone in a period of about 14 days, and you'll get a notification that says you may have been exposed, and here are the next steps. You should probably self-isolate. You should go take this great self-assessment test that was developed by the Ontario Digital Service. That's not in the app, that's just a plug. But and you should visit that site to find a testing center and get tested. So it's a really, really simple tool that we hope gets a lot of uptake, because again, contact tracing, that manual process done by public health, is vital and has to be sustained and will continue and keep going. Thousands of people across the country are doing that because that's the way to track down those known contacts of people and to give them that same information. Hey, you are at risk, you should get tested. This app is more for those unknown contacts, the people that maybe you stood by at the bus stop or waiting in line at Loblaws for your groceries. And it's all those unknown people that maybe you spent a few minutes of time within 6 feet from, but you can't tell a contact tracer to get in touch with them. That's what this app is for.
It's very cool. And so I don't need to worry about my privacy or my data or anything else?
Absolutely not. The only data that is really exchanged or held by the app at all are just random keys. All data is stored on the phone. The only thing that is stored, which it'll be stored in a federal server, are the list of phones that have been flagged, essentially. So that again, those anonymous keys, so that through the Apple and Google framework, because they have partnered for the first time together to make all devices be able to talk to each other. So it doesn't matter, it's not just iPhones talking to each other, and it's not just Android phones talking to each other, which is fantastic. But that's the piece that the server holds, is just those interactions. But otherwise, it's all held on your device, you're in control. You actually have the control to say, yes, I now want to share my diagnosis and let the other phones that I've been in contact with be notified. So it's kind of opt-in all the way.
You mentioned the fact that Apple and Google are working together. It's interesting to see what's happening. We see, I think it's GSK and Sanofi Pasteur, or a couple of the big pharma companies also working together. We see, some people setting aside patent rights to be able to produce things we need. There's a lot of really interesting shifts that are coming out of COVID-19. I mean, it's a bad thing and people are dying, but there's some good things that are going to come out of this. And how do we capture those? I mean, the innovation, the ability to be able to work quickly, to break through barriers and red tape, and how do we sort of capture that in a jar so we can have it for the long term?
It's $1 billion question, honestly, Ian. And it's not just for industry, but for government as well. We have shifted the pace, honestly, inside government. We've shifted the pace of policymaking, of product delivery, of decision making, making decisions, really with data at its core, with people in mind at its core. All the kind of stuff that makes me really excited, because we've been sort of shouting from the mountaintops for a few years. But I think that it's going to be up to all of us as leaders to essentially figure out, to ask those hard questions about what have we done, what have we changed, what have we pushed to the side to streamline, to go faster, to make decisions. And, we haven't subverted the law, we haven't subverted regulation, we haven't, it's just that we've said, all of these things that we thought were necessary, we've pushed to the side to make quick decisions, and we found out maybe they aren't necessary. So how can we move forward in a way that allows us to keep being as nimble as we have been, as agile as we have been? It's funny because teams like mine talk about agile all the time. Usually we're talking about software, but especially from my vantage point, from the Deputy Minister's office, we talk about being agile, and it's the same kind of thing. We're not creating a product, but we're working, and we're trying to make quick decisions so that we can have a decision point and iterate, etc. Having a backlog of work, whatever it might be. And I've seen folks would never call it agile, but you are seeing that across the government, in terms of there are some ministries that are having daily morning meetings, just quick daily morning meetings to understand status and what's on for the day. Well, that's a stand-up, and so it's exciting, because I think a lot of people have started to understand that we don't have to be face-to-face sitting across the table from each other. We don't have to be in kind of briefing mode all of the time. We can just be in agile decision-making mode, which just means we meet, we communicate, we understand our direction, and we go. So I hope we can figure out how to bottle that just really across the board.
Yeah, it's we have to because I've got so many questions. I don't know where to start. I think the thing that you talked about the team. I think that the one thing that's remarkable, and I'm so blessed that we have such great teams and their ability to be able to pivot quickly and go online. The interesting thing that I think is happening is that we've all gone on this crash course of living, playing, educating virtually, and we now have a common enemy, and I think those two things are going to be significant and have large scale change for us. But I think the one thing that's interesting about, and I've been saying this a lot lately, and I'm probably annoying people because I say it all the time, but I really do believe that proximity has become optional. And when you think about proximity being optional, whereas proximity was mandatory previously for much of what we did, I think it does change things like education and government and teams, the ability to be able to attract and retain talent. Mm-hmm. The other thing that's interesting about this sort of virtual world we live in now, and in a way, I thought that we would be distanced from each other, and in a way, there's a higher level of intimacy. I met your son, and I see the ugly art in the back of your wall, and so there's we know each other, we meet each other's pets, and so in a way we used to sort of keep our face in a jar by the door, and now of course we're writing in each other's homes. How have you found shifts with this, and Where do you think this, either proximity optional or some sort of hybrid is going to take us, and implications for us?
Yeah. Well, I'll start on the kind of personal side and just a little bit about our team, and then maybe expand to the bigger picture. Our team was pretty well suited to kind of make that switch day one, because we already had a pretty progressive teleworking, policy and attitude, and things like tools like Zoom allowing us to have virtual meetings, and even if 90% of the people on a certain team were in the office that day, there was probably always at least one person teleworking. So we just got in the habit of having the Zoom on, of having our faces, even if we're all sitting around the same table, of having our faces there, so that the one person maybe who wasn't there could see and could participate. And so we had some good habits, and I'm really pleased to see those, spreading both deliberately. We are spreading them, but also kind of naturally spreading across the public service.
Got a little question for you, Hillary. Can digital save democracy?
Oh, I used to say that designers would save the world. That honestly, I felt like if more people could just understand design, hire good designers, that would make so many different things better. And I still believe that. Can digital save democracy? It's such a hard question, because I believe that one day it likely will, but we are so far from that, simply because not everybody has access. And until everybody has access, you can't save anything. So we're doing a lot of work right now in Ontario to sort of understand what our future state looks like. How do we move toward truly becoming a digital government? And when I say that, it's really not just about digitization. It's not about how many things can you access online, but it's about our approach to delivering good service that actually works for people. Digital is a huge part of it, because I firmly believe that if you build a great digital service, it allows you to do that multi-channel delivery in a totally new way. So you build something great, you can deliver it here, you can deliver it at a kiosk, you can deliver it in person at Service Ontario, but it allows you to do all that in a different way. So I'm bullish about digital government, but we cannot let the fact escape us that not everybody can do that. Not everybody can access it. So the province is investing a lot in broadband. My personal opinion is we've got to do more, both as a country and at the local level, because it's and we've got to convince industry and businesses to do that with us, because they are investing a lot, but it's going to take a lot more.
Well, I think that there's going to be some aspects of our world which are going to be declared essential services of national interest, and I think ubiquitous access to internet is going to be one of them.
Yeah.
It has to be, that and a bunch of the other supply chains. I actually have been so impressed and pleased with the leadership of both our Prime Minister and our Premier. Mm-hmm. It's the both of them have said we're not going to get caught flat-footed again, and we're going to make sure that we have what we need. Tell me a bit about. I had the opportunity of spending a bit of time with Premier Ford, and I was struck by his seriousness and his commitment and his passion. And his love of this province and this country. Tell me a bit about. You've obviously had lots of opportunities to be spending time with him. Tell me a bit about what the Premier is like.
He is a truly kind of genuine person. I think you see people on TV and you see them in campaign mode, and you read what sort of both sides, if you will, kind of write about people, regardless of politics, and you just sort of, I think you make a picture of what a politician is. But the thing that has stood out to me, and the thing that I think has made all the difference for the work we're trying to do, is kind of going back to that campaign phrase of "for the people," because honestly, that's what the guy is about. He is truly for the people. Like, that's what's on his mind. And that's what his government has continued to focus on. And that's what is enabling us. Again, I said that to me, digital isn't about the bits and the bytes and, the pretty pictures and, but it is, are we delivering things that are usable and useful for the people? So it's made our jobs really easy because we can kind of return to that, even as a catchphrase, just to say, this is what we're doing. So it's been great.
As you think about sort of how we are going to emerge from our caves and as different creatures, fully, functional and literate in Zoom and Team and Meet and whatever else the other ones are, like, hold up your crystal ball and tell us what we're going to see going forward, Hillary.
Yeah, it's interesting because one of the other things that I had a chance to be involved in prior to coming here, I lived in San Francisco and co-owned a co-working space. And it was one of the first co-working spaces in the country, honestly. It was called Citizen Space. And it's been interesting to see the co-working movement really take off and change over the years, and become commoditized and commercialized. We work in the rest. But at the heart of that was, I think I've heard you talk about Communitech in this way too. And it's even in the name. It's, you're trying to create opportunity for folks, but it is rooted in the community. And to me, that was at the heart of co-working was, allowing people to have space to work and have those kind of moments of kind of delightful connection, unexpected connection. So that I've always kind of carried that feeling of what it was like to try to create that community with me, it just in other jobs and creating teams and all that kind of stuff. And I feel like part of the next step, especially just kind of some of the conversations that are happening in the public service, it rings a little bit of co-working, because we're talking about kind of going back to regional hubs and, and maybe it's not that everybody commutes to downtown Toronto, but they just commute to the office that is closest to them, because folks, want to be able to go into work and have some space to do that, but are still pretty hesitant to use public transportation and, some of the other things in terms of some of the stats I've seen. So I think our future it'll be interesting, because I think, teams are still going to have to get used to this, because I may be working in Oakville and somebody else may be working, Toronto and, et cetera. Or even if we're just a few blocks away, our teams won't necessarily come to those hubs together in the same way. So it's going to be this interesting mix of, going to these physical locations, but still, your team may not be in proximity to each other. And what that means for teams in terms of, again, all of the stuff that we've been working on to get used to this around, just not just the tools, but the culture, the trust, that you have to have in one another to be able to work in this way effectively. You're still going to have to do that. But hopefully, some of these sort of like kind of co-working spaces start to facilitate, community and culture in a different way too. Both in the public service, and I think honestly it'll probably end up taking off just in general as an idea again, as people start looking for an opportunity to maybe not be in their home every single day, but also not have to commute too far. That's one piece that I've been thinking about, but again, back to my comments kind of about agility and those quick decision-making opportunities. Like, I just think it's been so important for all of the executives and the leaders and the ministers to understand how effective people can be, even though you can't see them physically sitting at their desk. But again, getting into those rhythms of those check-ins, even if they're 15 minutes, to understand work continues, we're making progress. All of that has been, I think, just really, really incredible for the culture side of all of this.
Shifting gears a little bit, there's been some big shifts in America lately. Black Lives Matter. You're still an American. Tell me a bit about what you've been thinking about.
It's been interesting because I've had to think on a couple of different levels, because I mean, I guess first and foremost, trying to take care of my family, but my kids are young, they're 5 and 10, but they hear the news and they hear us talking about it, and so we've had some, tried to have some good provocative conversations with them, even though they're young, and we've busted out all the books that we've purchased over the years, just about, it's okay to be different, and about race and about poverty. We have lots of great books. So those have been conversation starters for us. So I've been doing that, but then also really just been trying to figure out how to be there and take care of my team. Because this is, again, all of it is, it's happening down there, but it's not, our Black and brown colleagues have faced this same stuff every day, whether it's just a shrug, a brush off, that is as damaging, in terms of the individual spirit as a lot of the stuff that's going on. So we've been trying to create space for that, both within the Ontario Digital Service, but also have been participating in some broader conversations across the public service. Having deep, hard conversations at the executive table about the inequities that do exist, and the environment that does exist, that even though it's not in our values, it's not in our publicly stated values, it's not how any of us personally would operate or experience the world, it exists. And what are we going to do about it? Just on a, on a personal note, it's pretty devastating, honestly. Because again, I have nothing to compare, absolutely nothing. I used to get nervous when I would get, pulled over, because, I present as a, as a lesbian, generally, and have certainly gotten comments or, officers not being as kind as they would to some maybe pretty thing that they would walk up to, etc. But oh my goodness, like the stories that have been shared, both from my team and that I've been trying to absorb and listen to, from other sources, just make you realize that, that America hit its breaking point, but we should all have hit our breaking point before now. It's been hard. It's been hard to understand also in this dynamic, in the world we're in, where we're not physically coming together as a team. Even before some of this stuff really exploded over the last few weeks, it was hard to figure out, how to show up for my team as a leader. I'm probably a non-typical executive in some ways, and I've always tried to connect as much as I could, and so that was really probably the biggest difference personally for me during this time, was figuring out how to continue to show up for people. But with this, added dynamic, which should always be there, quite frankly, until it's gone. It's been interesting, and I feel myself every time I do put something into Slack. I've been trying to, put a weekly message in or reach out to people, and every time I do, I get a little nervous. Like, is it too much? are people tired of hearing this from me? But it doesn't matter, because again, until it's gone, it can't be too much. We can't say too much, and we can't show up too much, because it's been too long of being silent and not saying anything. Even if you were passionate about it and donated and did all kinds of work, we have to do more. A few weeks ago, I retweeted a friend's picture from Los Angeles. Took this beautiful picture of Los Angeles, and you would never know it was LA, because the sky was blue and everything was green, and it looked so beautiful. And it was really only a few weeks into all of this. So just a couple of weeks without cars and without the pollution and without, humans making a mess of things, what nature was able to do to blow away some of that pollution, and to, the stories in California of all kinds of wildlife coming out in ways that, sure, in California, we used to rent a house in Tahoe, and you'd get the bear in your backyard, but not in Tahoe, just in LA. So I remember thinking something very similar to that, just that, the earth needs this. The earth needs a break. The earth hit its breaking point. And we're giving it a bit of respite with this. We're giving ourselves a bit of respite. Has it been hard? Yeah. And has it been devastating because of the death toll? Yes. But, I do believe that, there's part of me that is a little thankful. Again, it sounds callous and horrible to say that, but I love that I have been forced to be home and to take breaks during the day, to get a hug and a kiss from my kids, and to have lunch with them, and to, not just say, yep, I'll be home at 5, but to actually just turn off and be ready at 5, So I am thankful for those pieces. And like I said, I think it's time we hit our breaking point to understand the violence that happens to every single person of color, because of the inequities that are just built into how our world works. So I'm glad folks have hit their breaking point. We did need it.
Well, listen, I wanted to take the opportunity to thank you for spending some time with me today. It's been, as always, great to chat and hang out. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. Thanks, Iain.
I also wanted to thank everybody who tuned in. We'll be back next Tuesday at noon for the next episode of TrueNorthTV.
Thanks for watching this episode of TrueNorthTV. Subscribe to Communitech's YouTube channel to get notified of future episodes of TrueNorthTV.